Guys, so today we're going to be doing a book summary on Abraham Maslow's Toward a Psychology of Being. This book was actually really difficult to summarize, but I have finally done it for you guys. So I'm really excited to share with you what I learned from this book. It's definitely worth reading. So the basic premise of this book is that all humans have the same basic needs, and then we also have an inner nature or a need to self-actualize ourselves, which means reach our full potential as human beings, usually by creative means. So we all have like an inner nature or an instinctual, what does he call it here? He calls it like instinctual. I feel like almost like it's intuition almost, in a way, like the way he describes it. We all have this drive within us. So obviously we need to meet our basic needs first. So hopefully you're familiar with Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs, but if not, I'll put a diagram up here for you now. So we need to meet our basic needs first, which is like food, water, sleep, sex, to survive, obviously. And then we have emotional needs. We need to feel loved, accepted. We need to have like friends, you know? And then we have our other psychological needs, which are we need to like feel accomplished, and we need to feel like we've done things in our lives, and we need like prestige and things like that, recognition. Lastly, we reach our higher needs once all of our basic needs are met, which is self-actualization, which is this inner nature that he's referring to. So he's saying that we all have this inner nature. It's easily drowned out by our culture. It could be overrun by our culture. It could be overrun by our own fear. It could be overrun by the disapproval of others. It could easily be drowned out, this inner calling that we have. So it's actually kind of a challenge for us to figure out what our inner nature is actually in life. We're not like normal animals where we just have instincts that we follow. There's just too many things that we can get distracted by and actually, you know, stray off the true path that we're supposed to go down. Okay, so then he goes on to say that if our inner nature is denied or drowned out, we actually get psychologically ill. So this can manifest into psychological illnesses, or we can just have like character problems. What does he call them? Character disorders. You know, those people with like major character disorders. Wouldn't necessarily call them crazy, but they're pretty close to crazy. These people suffer from intrinsic guilt because they feel as if they're betraying themselves, and this could be at a subconscious level. So like I said, it manifests into like a very sick individual, and who knows, it can manifest into all kinds of things. Maybe they're like struggling with addictions. Maybe they're like really judgmental and critical of others, or it could just manifest as all kinds of like negative character traits. The author then, like, he studied a group of subjects who he believed to be self-actualized, so they reached this stage of fulfilling their higher needs, and he actually discovered a lot of commonalities in this group of people, and he basically just shares it in his book in detail. So I just picked out the most interesting points that I found to be worth sharing, and I'll just share that with you right now. So he really stressed the fact that these self-actualized people were able to integrate contradictory personality traits about themselves, or contradictory aspects about themselves that most people would have trouble because they seem like they oppose one another. But the self-actualized person was able to feel at peace with this and was able to accept all aspects of themselves and unify their character. They didn't have this constant inner struggle and inner turmoil that I feel like a lot of people are plagued by. They were also able to perceive the world this way. They didn't see the world in a dualistic way of black and white. They were able to integrate all of it, see it in a unified way. Okay, next. He talked about the need to know and the fear of knowing. So I thought this was like a really interesting chapter. Freud's greatest discovery, which is what the author also agrees with, is that the great cause of much psychological illness is the fear of knowledge of oneself. It's the fear of knowing the parts of yourself that you wish didn't exist, the parts of yourself that would make you despise yourself, make you feel ashamed, make you disgusted with yourself, but yet those parts of yourself still exist. Apparently, much of the psychological illness is that people deny this part of themselves, they don't accept it, and because they're denying it and using all these weird coping mechanisms, they get sick. This fear of knowing oneself is quite parallel to knowing the world, problems in the outer world. So it kind of reflects onto how you perceive your surroundings. Often this translates into a general fear of just learning in general. So it can cripple your curiosity and your desire to learn. He also kind of goes into this weird tangent about, this is really interesting. He basically says that most religions have a thread of anti-intellectualism. They, through their stories and their fables and allegories and stuff like that, they place very heavy value on faith, belief, and piety rather than knowledge. You just see this just classic example, Adam and Eve eating from the tree of knowledge. What happened to them? They got punished. They were cast out of the lovely Garden of Eden, and they were forced to toil for their whole lives because they wanted to know. So that's just one classic example, but that's not the only religion that's punished people for curiosity, basically. They imply that some forms of knowledge are too dangerous to meddle with, and that normal human beings aren't good enough to be privy to this knowledge, and it's only for the gods, and it's only like a godlike privilege to know certain things. And it's precisely the godlike in ourselves that we are very conflicted about, because a part of us is God. Part of us is very magical, very powerful, and yet another part of us is quite beastly and savage. So we have this ongoing inner conflict with both our godlike nature and our animalistic nature. Then he goes on to speak about two kinds of seeking knowledge. So there's seeking knowledge out of fear, which is like you seek it to put yourself at ease, and so to make yourself feel better. So for instance, you hear a noise downstairs and you go downstairs to investigate what this noise is, figure out it's like the furnace or something, and you feel better automatically. This is seeking to know out of fear. Then there is seeking to know out of growth, and this is very, very different. This is what self-actualized people do. They seek out of the need to feel illuminated. It's almost ecstatic. And when you learn in this way, you feel bigger, you feel smarter, you feel fuller, you feel more powerful, you feel successful, you feel like you have more perspective. And the author kind of equates it to it's as if all of a sudden you have like supersonic hearing, like your hearing becomes better, or your eyesight becomes keener. It's like one of your senses is really strengthened and just gives you this crazy high. Okay, and then the last point I wanted to talk about is he has this like creativity chapter, and he says that creativity in self-actualized people is not like your conventional perspective of what creativity is and how our culture portrays creativity. So he's very clear to differentiate talent versus creativity. Talent does not equal creativity. Creativity is not bound to certain careers or certain products. So like, just because you're not a painter or you're not a writer or you're not like some inventor, whatever, doesn't mean that you're not creative. And then he went on to say that he met a homemaker who was so good at homemaking. Like, she was amazing at cooking. Her taste in decor was like impeccable. Just everything about what she did, he said he couldn't call it anything but creative. In this way, he says that first-rate soup is better than a second-rate painting, which is totally true. And he says, healthy people, they're not productive in the ordinary sense, he says. It doesn't mean that they have great talent or genius. So he's not equating like creativity with people like Mozart or people like Van Gogh. He says that even like super talented creative people, they can be like super mentally ill and have crazy lives. Like, you know, look at Vincent van Gogh. He was like poor and pretty much unknown his entire life. He suffered from a lot of psychological illness, depression. Look at Lord Byron, famous poet. He amassed a lot of debt. He had some very scandalous relationships. And, you know, like I could go on naming crazy but very talented famous people. who obviously they're not psychologically healthy. So yeah, there's a definite difference between special talent creativeness and then what he calls self-actualized creativeness. He says self-actualized creativeness is more so a personality trait than like products that someone would produce. They just do anything creatively. They could be like a server at Starbucks and be really creative about it. They're more spontaneous and they're more expressive. They express themselves very freely. They're very childlike. They don't have any like inhibitions. They don't have any hesitant behaviors. They're literally just spontaneously expressing themselves. Free, completely free. This is what he means by self-actualized people who are creative. And then he also points out that this creative trait is inherent in all of us, but it usually gets buried or it gets drowned out as we get enculturated and as we grow up. And I found that to be true myself. So anyways, those were the main points of this book. I hope that this, helped you guys, and definitely worth reading this book. But like I said, it's very dry, and please just, maybe for you if you're like a really good reader, but for me it was kind of hard to get through, so maybe you'll get more out of it than I did. Okay, but anyways, thanks for watching. Bye.